Notice, challenge, change. And when it comes to cognitive therapy, it's the thought that counts. Hi there, my name is Thomas Brown, and I'd like to continue talking to you today about challenging our thoughts. As I've said in my other videos, I just want to remind you that these videos are really meant for self-help. If you're feeling unsafe and overwhelmed emotionally, it might be time to call 911 or go to your local emergency room. If you're dealing with an issue that is feeling pretty big and maybe a bit beyond your capacity to cope with it, but you're feeling safe, it might be time for you to call a place like Qualia Counseling Services or another local agency or counselor to get the professional help you need. If you're feeling like this is an issue that's sort of 5 out of 10 or less on the kind of emotional Richter scale, something that you would go to the bookstore to buy a self-help book for, these videos are probably for you. So with that being said, we have talked at length about the cognitive model, different ways to understand different types of clinical and subclinical issues. We've talked last time about how we start to challenge our thoughts, and we talked a lot about thoughts. And today I'd like to get into a far more kind of direct approach to challenging our thoughts. So as usual, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen with you, and we'll get looking at some of these ideas that I have for you. It's actually a pretty direct little handout that is also on the downloadable worksheets and resources that we have for you on our website. So here we are with challenge part 2. And I just want to quickly remind you that kind of the nature of thoughts. Remember that they're zooming through our head all the time, really quickly. And that they sometimes are so fast that we don't really pay attention to them too much, or they're kind of outside of our zone of consciousness. They impact how we feel and what we do. We learned about that in our very first video with the 5-factor model, and the way we interpret situations impacts how we feel and what we do and what our body does. I've already mentioned that they're kind of outside our consciousness, or just beyond what we pay attention to. We can bring them into our consciousness, but generally we don't pay a lot of attention to them. They're believable because they're in our brains, and why wouldn't we believe them? Often they're based on a little bit of truth, but not the entire truth. And as I've also said, we don't often spend a lot of time examining them or critiquing them or getting curious about them. So when it comes to challenging our thoughts, we have to change some of those things, don't we? We have to notice, as we've talked about, bring our thoughts into our consciousness, start paying attention to them, start watching our behaviors and seeing what we're doing and getting kind of wanting to start paying attention and critiquing those a bit, and then moving that along. So I've already talked about this. We have to pull our thoughts into our awareness. And we practiced that in earlier videos when we did some tracking and paying attention to our thoughts. We then need to give ourselves permission to question them, or even just kind of entertain that idea. Maybe before this video or before looking at these videos, you didn't really think about thinking too much, or you didn't think that you could question your thoughts or do anything with them. You know, the notion that our thoughts might not be true and we don't have to do what our thoughts say might be a really kind of new idea for you. So there's kind of permission here to start looking at our thoughts as something that isn't the gospel truth. It's not written in stone. Maybe it's something that can be altered or changed or adapted in some way. And then when we do that, start kind of giving ourselves permission, we got to get curious about them, and we got to start wondering about them. Is this true? Is this useful? What could I do with this? So it's sort of these little steps. We got to notice them. We got to start kind of saying, all right, I got to do something with this. I got to start changing them. And that's the challenge part that we're in right now. So as I said, in our resources section, our free downloadable resources, we've got a sheet there called the Challenging Your Thoughts worksheet. And I'm just going to go through those questions with you here. The worksheet on the website has a blank part and also kind of an example part. So you can look at both of those. But here's what these questions are. So the first thing we do is we pay attention to the situation, as we did in other exercises. And we pay attention to the situation, the who, what, where, when, so that we can kind of, it's easier to think about how we felt and think about what was going on when we can tie it to a concrete situation that happened. And usually we want to look for those situations that occurred, you know, maybe yesterday or the day before, not too far back in history. And then we want to ask ourselves this question: when this thing happened, what was I thinking or imagining? What was going through my mind? Okay? And then how does this make me feel? So I think the example that I used in the worksheets that you can take a look at is maybe I was at work, I emailed my supervisor asking for some time off and I haven't heard back in several days. Maybe that's the situation. I'm sitting there looking at the computer wondering if I'll hear back. And what I'm thinking is, I'm not going to get my time off. My supervisor is not going to give me the time off because I haven't seen this email yet. And it makes me feel sad. Okay. So then if we keep on going, we might want to say, okay, well, let's start critiquing. Let's start challenging this. Let's get a little bit curious about it and wonder about it. So what makes me think that this is true? Well, if I'm kind of going with my example, maybe I found out that a few of my colleagues haven't gotten time off recently. And so that might make me think it's true. And it is also true that I haven't heard back from my supervisor. So those two things might be examples of why I might think it's true. What makes me think that this thought isn't true or not 100% or completely true? Well, I know other people who have gotten time off recently. I don't really know what my supervisor is thinking. And I guess if I really think about this, maybe the email could have got lost in the junk mail, or maybe my my supervisor is very busy. I guess there's a lot of reasons why I haven't heard back from them. And I guess maybe that doesn't necessarily mean I won't get my time off. So you see how we start challenging this right off the bat, start kind of paying attention and critiquing this? We keep going in this worksheet. So what's the worst that could happen and what could I do then? Well, I guess the worst that would happen is I don't get my time off and I would just have to maybe alter my plans or plan to do something fun or away from work another time. What's the best that could happen? Well, the best would be that I get my time off. I get an email from my supervisor saying, yep, your time off is approved and enjoy the day. So that would be the best that could happen. And this is a really important little question. And we sometimes even call this an intervention in and of itself. We call it the best friend technique. And you imagine that you have a really good friend or a family member, someone that you really love, that you value their opinion, that you value them. And imagine that they were in the exact same position that you are in, or in the exact same situation that you are in. And what would you tell them? So I'd imagine maybe I'm talking to my sister and she is in the exact same situation as me. And I'd probably tell her, okay, well, you haven't gotten that email back, but you really don't know what's going on. So maybe just wait for a little while longer. And if you still don't hear back, send another email. That's what I might tell my sister. We're on the tail end of this worksheet now. And so what's another way to look at this? Well, another way would be, I guess I don't know why my supervisor hasn't returned my email. And just because I haven't received an email from them, that doesn't necessarily mean I won't get my time off. So maybe I'll just think, all right, wait and see. Maybe that's my new thought. And if my new thought's in place, wait and see, what will I do now? Well, I'm going to wait and see. I'll give it another little while, maybe a day or two. And maybe my action plan would be that I email my supervisor in 2 days if I haven't heard back. And now if I circle back on my feelings, I don't feel as sad anymore. And I'm feeling a little bit more neutral, maybe even a little bit curious to find out what happens. So this whole process is the challenging process. And again, we've kind of taken it from noticing what was going on to challenging it to see if I can sort of think of something different that makes me feel a little bit better. And my thought needs to be a little bit more fair and balanced. This whole thing is called in CBT language, cognitive restructuring. So cognitive meaning our thoughts and what's going on in our mind, and restructuring meaning that we're kind of reworking it, almost like a construction site. We're taking it apart and we're kind of building it back a little bit differently with some new stuff in there to hopefully make us feel a little bit better. So there we go. That was part 2 of challenge. And we're going to talk in next videos about some behavioral changes and a few other things. I hope you like this video, and I'll talk to you next time. Thanks.